Crabbe, chapters 16 through 19. Crabbe is a semi-alcoholic teenager that has no friends. He decides to fix all his problems by running away into the bush. One day he loads up the family wagon with a canoe and camping supplies and heads out. Canoes through several small streams, rivers, and lakes. Falls over a waterfall and is found by a girl named Mary who's living in the bush for some reason. Teaches him how to live in the bush and fixes him because he fell off a waterfall. Stuff like that. One day, Mary decides that Crabbe needs to go back to civilization and face his problems, and she needs more supplies. So they go to a hunter's camp.
Camp is a long canoe ride away, and a longer walk away. When they finally get there, they see the layout of the camp. 4 buildings, a big rec hall, a small food storage shed, and 2 residential cabins, all surrounding a large clearing. Crabbe and Mary sneak around to look into the rec hall. They see a large room with a big stone fireplace, old couches, and a large poker table. They see that the hunters are there already. There's 4 of them. Crabbe and Mary sneak around the food shed and start loading food into large camp bags. They take only staples. Staples are basic, non-perishable food items, usually the main ingredients in most foods, such as flour, rice, salt, pepper, etc. After one of the bags is full, Crabbe decides to take it out around the back of the food shed and hide it. On the way back, he has an emotional moment and then sees 2 of the hunters having a pissing contest. One of the hunters is a small, skinny man with a high-pitched, whiny voice and a laugh like a donkey. The other is a big, chubby bulk of a man. Skinny wins the pissing contest. The fat one doesn't like losing, so he pees on Skinny's leg. So Skinny punches him in the face. Then the other 2 come out to see what the commotion is, and one of the hunters brings a big brown German Shepherd. Shepherds are known for their keen sense of smell and great intelligence. The hunters don't suspect anything, but the dog smells something. So it begins to head towards the food shed, and the dog man catches on. Then Mary makes a noise, and the dog goes right for her. She gets caught and taken inside. Crabbe doesn't know what to do. He sits frozen between the cabins, then when he looks up and sees the sparks coming out of the chimney, he knows what he has to do. He runs to a birch tree and using his knife, he cuts an eye shape in the bark. Using the flat blade of the knife, pries the bark off one side and runs around the tree, pulling the bark off. He takes the bark into the cookhouse and cuts it into thin strips and builds a small teepee out of them. Before he sets the bark on fire, he runs to a large walk-in fridge and grabs as much steak and hamburger as he can carry. He also grabs a can of pepper. The steaks and hamburger to distract the dog, and the peppers to cover their trail.
After he steals the pepper and the steaks, Crabbe burns the kitchen building down. While the hunters are distracted with their flaming kitchen, he goes into the rec hall to find Mary. The German Shepherd is locked in a room and is barking like crazy. Crabbe starts calling for Mary. She replies. He goes down to the hallway. Through the door, he hears her voice in. He finds her laying on a bed, all tied up. Appears to be raped. He gets her all untied, and they escape, putting the steaks and the meat down to distract the dog. They run through the bush and throw pepper behind them so the dog can't smell them. To get away from the hunters, Crabbe and Mary run. Mary is delusional. And they get to a river, walk down the river some ways, and then cross. They run through the bush in the rain, in the dark at that, for close to 24 hours. They climb up a cliff with what appears to be really nasty, clammy hand.
Crabbe tries to make a camp, which is quite difficult in the rain. He sends Mary to go get firewood, and he tries to get a fire going. A little mini fire going, which doesn't burn very well in the rain. As soon as he realizes that Mary's missing, he goes looking for her. He wanders everywhere except for the cliff that they just came from. And finally, once the fire's died and the camp's all cold, he decides to get up the nerve to go check the cliff.
Crabbe walks up to the cliff. Mary's down there. She had fallen and broken her neck in her delusions. Very sad. After Crabbe realizes what he must do, he runs around in the forest gathering as many sticks as he can. He puts Mary in the pile of sticks and gives her a Jedi funeral. He goes on.
Funeral pyres were originally used by the Vikings, who would place their dead upon a ship, light it to fire, and cast it out to sea. Crabbe took off running through the bush, following only his compass, ignoring everything else around him. It took him a long time to find the canoe.
Once Crabbe finds the canoe, he canoes across the lake and hides the canoe so no one can see it. He gets back into his camp, makes a fire, dries his clothes, and goes to sleep. When he wakes up, he's sad to say that he couldn't feel bad about Mary. Or was it before he went to sleep? Either way, he realizes that he needs to see what was in the forbidden bag that Mary never wanted him to look in. He goes and walks around in the bush and eventually finds it. He reads that Mary was a university teacher at some university in Toronto. He also learns Mary was married. He gets jealous.
They were at a protest. Her husband got pushed in front of a taxi and became... He ended up in the hospital, unable to move. She performed a mercy killing.
And pull the plug. Society doesn't like it when you do this, and that's why she was hiding in the bush.
Crabbe hangs around camp for some time.
After figuring out that what Mary had done, Crabbe mopes around his camp, or her camp, for several weeks. It begins to snow and he realizes he has to go now or he'd be blocked in all winter. That wouldn't be good. Loads everything that he has, clothes that Mary had, into a bag, gets the canoe and sets out. There's light snow and ice on the sides of the rivers. Crabbe had taken a different route out of the bush than he did to get in. Nothing much really happens on his way there. He picks up the journals again when he gets to the first portage. You can see Crabbe has gotten stronger during his stay in the bush because on his way in, he couldn't carry a bag or the canoe separately. Now, he traipses along through the bush with a backpack and a canoe on his shoulders. Go! Crabbe is now walking through the bush wearing every article of clothing he has with his. He had cut up one of his bags to make a jacket. He was also wearing a jacket that he inherited from Mary. It begins to heavily snow, and he finds out later that this was one of the biggest blizzards of the year that he was walking in substandard clothing with a canoe and a backpack on him. His head was sheltered from the stinging cold snow and wind from the hull of the boat, but his hands and other rest of him was exposed. He sees a fallen tree which makes kind of a little cave, and he decides that he is going to set up camp there. He throws the canoe down and gets out a tent and drapes it over top of the canoe and the tree. He packs snow around the canoe and the tree to make an airtight seal. He sets up camp here and goes to sleep. He wakes up to notice that there is condensation forming on the top of his little hideout that he made. So there you have it. All the important happenings of the book Crabbe by William Bell, chapters 16 to 19.